Ladies and gentlemen, people of the internet, welcome to yet another episode of an ongoing weekly series called Crypto Over Coffee. Every Friday, I pick out interesting news, current events, and announcements in the cryptocurrency and technology world, and then I break them down for you over a cup of delicious coffee. Today, we're talking about the harsh reality of Bitcoin's price drop, ChainLink's latest big implementation, Ethereum's latest controversy, Bitcoin adoption, and much more. Oh, and by the way, in today's episode, as well as in future episodes, I'll be giving away products, apparel, crypto, and more. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and stop by every single Friday so you don't miss out. That being said, last week I challenged viewers to name me the show and episode name for a quote that I said in that episode to win $15 in Bitcoin. Then I randomly picked a winner from those who got it correct. So can we get a drum roll, please? The winner is Felix Lionel. Congratulations, sir. Please reach out to me so I can get you your Bitcoin. And as always, we will start the meat and potatoes of the episode with questions from the community on YouTube and Twitter. So we'll head over to the good old iPad and get started with those. And remember, if you want one of your questions answered, leave them in the comments down below or tweet me at Hashoshi4. All right, let's start with a question from YouTube, actually. Hey, brother, I see you're an Ethereum guy. Yes, I am. I guess you could say that. I'm just wondering why you haven't covered Matic Network in depth yet, especially since they're the best second layer scaling solution available for Ethereum. They use Plasma sidechains as a scaling solution. I'd really like to hear your thoughts. I haven't covered Matic only because of time constraints. It's definitely on the list, and I've done some research on it, but not enough yet for a full video. But I'll give you this. In terms of Matic, I think it's a great project concept, and they've done some really awesome work. In essence, for those of you who aren't familiar, Matic is a sidechain that uses the Plasma Layer 2 architecture native to Ethereum. When a user wants to transact an ERC20 token, for example, or pay for a store purchase with Ether, they want that to happen instantaneously. They don't want to wait even 20 seconds for a block to be mined. So Matic's network is optimized for speed, and when someone wants to transact quickly, they can send funds to the Matic contract on Ethereum, which is like an orchestrator service. And that contract mirrors those tokens on the Matic sidechain, a separate blockchain from the Ethereum mainnet. On the Matic sidechain, one can transact these tokens nearly instantaneously, as the Matic chain is tailor-built to handle like sub 1 second transaction times for finality. Then when a user is done transacting, he or she can withdraw any remaining tokens they sent to that Matic contract on the Ethereum network and verify that with a proof between two networks to make sure that the state of the funds is as they say they are, right? You don't want people to be able to create new coins out of thin air. As you might remember, in blockchain, that is a big no-no. So pretty cool stuff here. I'm really curious to see how it translates into the world of Ethereum 2.0 though. So would you want to see an in-depth video on this? If you guys are interested, let me know in the comments below so I know what to focus on. So let's move on to another question. Oh, this was a good one after a tweet that I tweeted the other day about NFTs. Someone asked, what is an NFT? So first and foremost, non-fungible tokens or NFTs are a unique type of crypto asset that represents a unique digital asset on a blockchain network. A famous implementation of this or example of this is CryptoKitties. Each kitty is unique and has its own metadata attributes that give it value, unique value. The concept of fungibility here is what separates these two types of tokens, right? Fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens. So comparing one like basic attention token, for example, which is an ERC20 token, each basic attention token is exactly the same. You don't care which 60 basic attention tokens you have, as long as you have 60 basic attention tokens. The same way you don't care what dollar you have, you don't care what particular note you have for a dollar, as long as it's a dollar. This is a fungible asset. It's exchangeable one-to-one at a common exchange rate. Now, a non-fungible asset like a CryptoKitty is one that isn't one-to-one exchangeable because each one is unique. So I'd rather have 5 ultra rare CryptoKitties worth thousands than 500 common ones that are super worthless. That in and of itself is non-fungibility. So we've seen NFTs being used on all sorts of platforms to create digital collectibles like art, avatars, trading cards, as well as digital representations of assets like titles of homes or event tickets like we talked about in last week's episode. Now, there's a huge opportunity here for crypto collectibles, non-fungible tokens, and I think NFTs are going to be a major player in driving adoption of crypto in the near future. So bear that in mind and do some research on NFTs. Thank you very much for the question, Xana Fundamental. All right, back to the questions. Can we convert real art objects like paintings, jewelry, and timepieces, sculptures, handicrafts, etc., into NFTs associated with real products, or just have the option to tokenize them? Thank you for the question, Monty, Wild and Witty on Twitter. Interesting name there. The short answer is I think both of the things that you said are true. Representing a physical asset with a digital asset is tokenization. I do think in the future there might be ways that we can more accurately peg physical world objects to the digital world in the term of an NFT or a token. And I think that's the place where people get a little confused, because when you tokenize an object or an asset in real life, you're really only getting one thing. You're getting a digital representation of that asset on a blockchain so you can show chain of custody and ownership on chain. However, that doesn't mean that the physical asset still followed that exact chain of custody, because the physical to digital world connection isn't quite there. So using things like 3D scanning technology, RFID tags, IoT devices, and edge clients like that, we can more accurately track the ownership of the actual physical item in the real world and track it on chain. There is also an opportunity to take art that exists today and sort of mutate it, create a brand new version of it in the digital world that people want to collect, and then completely move it off chain, making the physical world one less important at the end of the day. So there are a lot of things that might happen, but really it's hard to say what'll happen with all of these things in real life. You could even have VR making the whole entire world of art different and totally focused on NFTs. So crazy stuff. Who knows? Thank you for the question. David Pengel asks, where do you personally see Cardano next year at this time? Not price-wise, thank you, but schedule-wise as far as their timetable to Shelley, Gauguin, Basho, and Voltaire. Also a great question. So here's the deal. A lot of people get really frustrated with Cardano in general because of the delays and because of the poor timelines that they've given on a lot of these development sprints and tasks. I think a lot of the problem has less so been talent or capability, but it's more so been poor communication and not being able to accurately estimate how long things will take. Long periods of time working is not necessarily an issue as long as it's communicated appropriately and expectations are appropriately set. So in this case, I think that's more so the issue. But that being said, I think it's very important for Cardano to get Shelley out mid-year this year. That is very important. That'll get people on board. That'll get people using the actual mainnet. But then I think they also need to get Gauguin out by 2020 end or the first couple months, like Q1 2021 at the latest. So I would say by the time we get to Q1 2021, which is about where we're at today, they need to have Gauguin out, and I think that they will. So they need to have smart contracts out there in mainnet, or at least in a widely available testnet. But again, it's hard to say, and hopefully this last hard fork, the way they communicated that and actually got it right, is an example of what's to come from Cardano. So hopefully that's what we see. Thank you very much for the question. By the way, I'm drinking a local Virginia, USA coffee, Red Rooster. Fantastic coffee company. Check them out. All right, Crypto in Culture asks, how do other dev communities react when you say that you're building in the crypto space? Hashtag Bitcoin. I love that hashtag. It still doesn't get old. Well, I would say that other dev communities are hit or miss. I think some people say, why are you wasting your time? Why are you devoting your career to something that's just going to go to zero or get regulated away? And that's, I'd say, the minority objection that I get from people. I would say most often people are just very interested in what that actually means. A lot of people think that developing dApps or working with Ethereum or trying to learn Haskell for Plutus smart contracts is like this wizardry, this thing that you do that takes so much extra skill and you have to be a genius. And when in reality, it's not actually that way. Most developers have the capability to do this. You just have to change the way that you're thinking about it And the key difference is how systems are architected, and how you have to test is a lot different, because in a distributed application, you don't know who's going to be using your application. So public code, not knowing who's going to use it and how they're going to use it, takes a little bit more effort in the testing phase. But that's really all that there is to it. Once you know a couple programming languages, you can really pick this up. So I would say the dev communities are often interested in learning how to get involved themselves, or at least trying to figure out what it is that I actually do and how it's different from what a normal developer would do. And in the end, it's not a whole lot different than what a normal developer would do. So great question. There's that. Moving on. Duran asks, some exchanges like Coinbase insure your cryptos now up to 250,000 US. Why do you need to move it if you have less than 250K? So what this means to me is that you're asking me, why do you need to move to a hardware wallet if they're insured up to 250K? And my response to you would be, because you have to trust that that 250K is going to come to fruition if a huge catastrophic loss were to happen. That is the grandest issue, because insurance in this space is not like insurance that you have with FDIC or other reserve banks. They can't just, print money. They can't always guarantee that there aren't sort of terms and conditions that would maybe conditionally say, hey, we can't actually pay you those resources. Like, I just have trust issues, I guess, that this would actually pan out the way that we think it would in relation to insurance claims. The only way to guarantee that you have full control of your crypto and that it's safe in the event that there is a hack or there's something that goes wrong is to have it in a hardware wallet. So if it's that cheap to do and you have that peace of mind and that security, personally, I believe, why wouldn't you do it? Obviously, I can't make you do anything, and I'm not trying to make you feel guilty or to feel bad if you're, oh, well, they're insured, it's fine. I would just highly urge you to take your crypto, at least the majority of it, off of an exchange. The other benefit here is that if you have it in your control, you have the keys under your control, you can stake with Tezos, for example, without paying a fee to Coinbase. So, there are those things that people say about not keeping it on exchanges and it's terrible. And those things are true, but then again, some people want to keep it on exchanges, and that's just the reality. In my mind, best practice, always use a hardware wallet, even if they're insured. You can never trust anybody. All right, let's see what else we've got here in terms of questions. Here's another interesting one. Bikash Jenna asks, hi bro, I wanted to know that how can a fresher candidate, so someone who's new, who completed his career in mechanical engineering, now trying to enter into the blockchain development field, how can they get into it? What skills do I need if he or she wants to have a career in the blockchain field? Great question. This is also kind of going off of what we talked about before, and that is the first thing you need to understand the fundamentals of how blockchain solutions are built and how they differ from traditional systems. Centralized systems are actually a lot easier to plan from a security perspective on, because you know the endpoints, you know the openings, you know the attack vectors. Most of the time, you know all of those things up front. In terms of distributed systems, you don't know who's going to have access to your code, because it's all open source as soon as you push it to the chain, because anyone can see the opcodes and the binaries and all that stuff. Everyone can see the ABI. All those things are now public, so the security model is a lot different. But beyond that, being able to clearly speak to the value proposition of what blockchain has to offer, or crypto has to offer for a specific problem. Because you can be in the blockchain field and develop solutions that work, but are completely worthless because they don't actually solve a real problem. So that would be the first place that I would go. Understand the fundamentals of blockchain and crypto and how they affect business problems that you would approach with it, right? Secondarily, if you want to be a developer, you want to get in the blockchain field as a developer, if you have development skills already, you're probably already ready to do that, to jump in, go to cryptozombies.io, go check out Ivan on Tech Academy, go do one of those things. And I think you'll be surprised at how much you can do. Now, that being said, the couple languages that are really important or that I think are really helpful is if you have JavaScript experience, you're going to feel right at home with Solidity, and you'll feel right at home on the Ethereum ecosystem. If you have Python experience as well, you'll feel right at home with Viper and sometimes Solidity, but Solidity is a little bit weird for people that are in the Python space. That being said too, if you're really into functional programming, you like Haskell, you like those types of languages, you can go and jump into Plutus within the Cardano ecosystem. There are a ton of different ways to get involved in blockchain application development, and the actual smart contracts are only a small piece of the overall development scheme. So even if you are just a UI developer, UX developer, all these startups need UX guys. All these startups need, UX, UI guys and gals to come in and help them make their products presentable. So go get a job in the blockchain space and reach out to me if I can be of any assistance. So with that, guys, I think we're done with the questions for today. And again, if you want your question answered, please do tweet me, ask me questions online, all that good stuff. I read every single comment and I try to respond to every comment to the best of my abilities, but I'm not a robot. So sips coffee, moving on. The very first story on the list today is in the world of Bitcoin, which this week has been mostly bad news, unfortunately. That said, we're starting with some good vibes. The billionaire CEO of the well-known space company Virgin Galactic, Chamath Palihapitiya, went on record stating that everybody probably should have 1% of their assets in Bitcoin. And that is a direct quote. And if I butchered the name, I am sorry. He went on to say that because it is an uncorrelated asset, it's a great hedged bet for the future. In a highly simplified definition, an uncorrelated asset means that it is an asset whose price is intrinsically unlinked to our current global economic systems and other asset class prices. Chamath is one of my favorite entrepreneurs, and to hear him speak with reverence towards Bitcoin and its standing as a safe haven asset is really encouraging. Stay tuned though for more Bitcoin price and adoption talk throughout this video. We have some really interesting stuff that you don't want to miss coming up later, so stay tuned. Now, another topic that seemed to just blow up this week was the long-standing and stale debate over the programmatic proof-of-work consensus algorithm change within the Ethereum ecosystem. This is referred to ProgPoW for short. There are factions of people on both sides that support this consensus algorithm change and those who vehemently oppose it. This has been a topic of conversation for ages now, like we're talking years, and I'm shocked that it's still so hotly contested without any compromise or solution in sight. So essentially, this new algorithm is designed to close the gap in efficiency and block making probability between standard graphics processing units, or GPU miners, and then application-specific integrated circuit miners, or ASICs, thus lowering the risk of monopolization of ASIC miners on the network, right? ASICs are a problem in a lot of proof-of-work networks because they're highly specialized. During this transition to proof of stake that we're going through now, this ProgPoW migration was intended to be a security measure against 51% attacks that are obviously, to a lot of people, more likely when ASICs are in the game. And it also provides an incentive for miners to move to the new proof of stake ecosystem as mining becomes more difficult over time, so that the chances of a contentious break from the proof of stake network are lessened. Now, ProgPoW essentially is designed to take the core advantage of ASICs out of the mix, which is that ASIC mining rigs are optimized to be lightning fast using a standard, consistent, specialized algorithm. So they're really specialized pieces of hardware for a given hashing algorithm. So ProgPoW is designed to programmatically change the consensus algorithm every 50 some odd blocks with a randomized sequence of mathematical operations in the computational cycle. Hence the name programmatic proof of work. It makes perfect sense. Of course, this means that every person with a profitable ASIC mining setup is really pissed off now and opposes the fork for the most part. There are exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, ASIC miners and people who own those rigs are not happy. Meanwhile, GPU miners and standard users of the network are largely either apathetic, they don't care, or they support this change, right? So for me, the original idea for ProgPoW was to make the transition to proof of stake smoother and less contentious when it came into the fold years ago. But this issue itself is now contentious, so I feel it defeats the entire purpose. I understand the technical reasons for this change and the thought process behind it, but I'm not comfortable with the contentious hard fork being forced within months of the estimated May-June 2020 timeframe for the ETH 2.0 beacon chain to at least start its launch. This could be a real issue if that happens. The debate and split amongst the community on this only means that the very risk of a contentious hard fork leading up to proof of stake that this ProgPoW algorithm was designed to prevent seems to now be a real risk in implementing ProgPoW itself. So I'll get off my soapbox, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments what side of this argument you're on, because I'm really curious what people think. Now, in other news, the Joint Photographic Experts Group, who created the ubiquitous image file format JPEG, which you've probably seen, recently spoke optimistically about the impact of blockchain technology on digital rights management and copyright enforcement of images and other digital media. This group is a composition of a variety of regulatory and standard setting bodies in the technology world, and they've been spending some resources to formulate a plan to explore a blockchain solution, or solutions plural, that could combat fraudulent image postings and combat copyright infringement. I will tell you, this is definitely a great use case to approach, and it's been talked about before, but it's a lot more complex than you might think. One nice way to check quickly if a file has been copied from somewhere is to compare the hash of that image, or the fixed length data fingerprint of that file, against a registered owner's hash to see if they match. And if those hashes match, it means the files are the same. So then they can check if the owner's key had signed the image in question to make sure that it came from the proper source and it was a legitimate use of the image. However, because of the avalanche effect, which is key to hashing algorithms, you can find a video linked up somewhere about hashing and all that sort of thing. One small change to the original image file, like we're talking tiny change, like 1 character, 1 byte, 1 bit, and that hash is now totally different and will fail in comparison to the owner in a check. With all these platforms like Instagram, Twitter, etc., that have their own formats, their own filters, their editing tools, etc., a standard hash matching mechanism is going to fail completely unless standards are set to prevent that, which, best of luck getting standards to be adopted across multiple technologies. It's not that easy. This solution is possible, but it requires both standards for image storage and validation in terms of file format, what modifications are allowed, what metadata is required to be stored with an image, and it's also going to require some heavy-duty on-chain components as well. So I'm all for this happening, but it's going to have to be carefully done. On to the next one. For those of you who follow my channel, and thank you, by the way, if you already do follow my channel, I really do appreciate it, you'll know that I'm a big supporter of Brave Browser, the privacy-focused web browser that offers a unique cryptocurrency integration to pay you for viewing anonymously matched opt-in ads in the browser itself. If you have not already tried it, I encourage you to do so using my link down in the description below, but if you're not already sold, this news might actually help. In a paper published by Douglas J. Leith, and I think I'm saying that correctly, from the Trinity College of Ireland, Brave Browser was identified as the most private browser right out of the box among 6 major browsers tested in a comprehensive study. Leith tested Brave, Chrome, the new Microsoft Edge that's built on Chromium, Firefox, Safari, and Yandex for privacy by using a variety of tests while recording network activity during web searches and normal browsing activity. This was very much a forensics study, if you will. To give you a summary of the results, Brave shined in its ability to conduct web searches and browsing activities without propagating unique identifiers and IP addresses that can be used to track your browsing history to you, and it did not log any of your browsing history to backend servers, which is fantastic. Without having to install any extensions or configure Brave to mess with any settings, it was private by default. Chrome, Firefox, and Safari, on the other hand, all did log your browsing history to servers, and then it was a black box from there. Firefox was also dinged for its wide open push notification WebSocket connection, which personally I don't think is a giant deal. But one thing I do think is a big deal is that Firefox also comes default with its telemetry collection setting turned on. So you could potentially track your browsing history and what you're doing in the browser back to you. If you were to request that information to be deleted, they could track it back to who you are. This is a theoretical attack, but it's something that just shouldn't happen. It should be off by default. Now, I also have to say that Yandex and Edge were both guilty of sending persistent unique identifiers that could be linked to your IP address and compromise your privacy, which is not good. Edge was the worst of the two, as it transmitted the hardware UUID, or unique ID, for your device to the backend servers as well. Of course, this does not mean all these browsers are bad. It does not mean that they are all insecure garbage, but rather it means that they are not optimized for privacy by default like Brave is. Firefox is definitely a great browser, do not get me wrong, but for those of you who question how privacy-focused Brave actually is, this is just more actual substantive evidence in favor of that fact. Of course, you can find the full details of the study linked below as well, so you can read through the method and the results and think for yourself. Now, I have really enjoyed both the negative and the positive responses to my talk of regulation on these weekly episodes, so I'm going to keep the party going on that front. Cue the hateful comments. This past week, the SEC rejected what seems to be the millionth proposal for a Bitcoin ETF or exchange-traded fund that would provide more access to Bitcoin for investors at scale. This is not at all surprising, as it seems now the running theme that the SEC will appear to deny any and all proposals regardless of their merit. In response to this rejection, SEC Chair Hester Peirce, who is an advocate for cryptocurrency and common sense regulation in the space, made her distaste for this decision well known. And I quote, "This line of disapprovals leads me to conclude that this commission is unwilling to approve the listing of any product that would provide access to the market for Bitcoin, and that no filing will meet the ever-shifting standards that this commission insists on applying to Bitcoin-related products and only to Bitcoin-related products." Now that right there is some fire. I have an immense amount of respect for Hester Peirce because she's laying down facts here, and she has earned the title Crypto Mom for her long-standing support of this technology. She just wants rules to be followed to protect consumers and investors, but also wants the space to be free of restrictive and punitive regulation that stunts the growth of the space overall. I had the chance to meet her at a conference recently and introduce myself, and she's had a lot of great ideas for a long time that I hope she can one day implement in full force. And she will talk to you about all those plans if you ever meet her, so I highly recommend that you go and introduce yourself if you do come across her at a conference. But for now, my imaginary hat goes off to you, Hester. Thank you very much for your advocacy. Now, moving back into the world of Ethereum 2.0 for I think the third week in a row now, we got some updates that explained more deeply both the components of ETH 2.0's implementation, but also provided some insight into the testing and the process that's going on behind the scenes. Coffee break. Okay, thank you. A couple of interesting things popped out at me in this report. The first sentence read, quote unquote, "No updates to the current version v0.10.1 for the phase 0 beacon chain implementation," which implies to me that things are starting to get stable enough to stop rapidly adding new features and changing versions. There were some updates for denial of service protections, bug fixes, efficiency improvements, but that's all par for the course. We also got confirmation that the phase 1 implementation spec for sharding functionality that's due later this year or early 2021 is rapidly approaching finalization after review cycles. Furthermore, the testnets being run at Prismatic Labs for Ethereum 2.0 are looking good under a load of around 41,000 validators and 300,000 slots or rounds completed. So this is a good load test for the network. I'll be looking into a heavy load test being done in the near future though, as we approach a wider testnet and then hopefully a phase 0 launch in May or June or maybe July of 2020. Work is being done. Work is being completed on the ETH deposit contract that will effectively migrate Ether from the current proof of work or ETH 1.0 chain to the new proof of stake ETH 2.0 chain, hopefully this year as well on that same timeline. So more on that as we hear it. Now, if we pivot over to the world of ChainLink, the team announced that ChainLink oracles are now operational on the Polkadot network. For those unfamiliar with Polkadot, it is a project focused on building a deeply integrated interoperability network. I'm really happy I got that right, among a variety of different blockchains. It's like a tongue twister. This continues to reinforce the strategy that I believe ChainLink is very wisely taking in getting adoption, and that is focusing on interoperability chains that will get their oracles in more people's hands without having to individually integrate with each unique blockchain network and their unique execution environments therein. By targeting the interoperability focused network like Icon that we reported a couple weeks ago, and now Polkadot that's doing a very similar thing, ChainLink is setting itself up to ride the wave of interoperability in the space. This cuts down the amount of work they have to do in terms of custom dev, and it's a fantastic approach. By the way, make sure you subscribe to the channel because I have a deep dive on ChainLink coming really soon, and I'll teach you all about it and how it works. So if you're interested in that, it's coming. All right, well, yet again, we have a week completely dominated by what seems to be a continuous flow of bad price news for Bitcoin. We saw yet another day where Bitcoin not only fell below 10,000 for the 1,000th last time, and not only that, it fell well into the mid 8,000 range on the momentum of sell-offs and bad news. Now this signals to me two things. Number one, this puts to bed the nonsensical idea that Bitcoin is going to pump every single time bad stuff happens in the world and people are fearful. Coronavirus fear and panic was on a high this week, and stock markets have been crushed because of that news. And guess what? Bitcoin fell right along with the stocks. What do people do when they face uncertainty? They pull out cash. They buy supplies. They sit on their cash. They're conservative. What they do not do is go and buy a speculative asset or focus on fundamental economics, as much as we would want to think that that was the case. People by default are panickers, and that's why a 2% drop in a stock can turn into a 10% tumble. People don't think in economically sound terms. They don't think clearly when things look bleak. It's all self-preservation in a lot of senses. So for those of you cheering for a recession or for pandemic because you think Bitcoin's going to pump because of it, I'm really sorry. I don't think you're in for a real treat here if that is the case. Number two, as always, this is not financial advice, and I'm far from qualified to tell you what to invest in and what not to invest in, but this just further proves that the technical analysis you see online for Bitcoin, the stock to flow chart, all these indicators that you see on Twitter cannot ever predict the price with a level of accuracy that you need to make these types of crazy decisions financially. This means that you need to protect yourself from that by not risking too much, by not falling into the constant buy, and then sell panic cycles that we go through what seems like, I don't know, every month or two now. Have a plan, have a goal, and stick to it. Don't deviate from the plan. Cool heads prevail, and that is one thing that I'm absolutely sure of. All of that being said, there is some good news here in the financial reporting cycle for Square in the Bitcoin space. The company that runs my very favorite place to buy Bitcoin these days, the Square Cash App, is run by Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Square and Twitter. And they recently announced that nearly half of the revenue that they earned through Square Cash App in the last quarter of 2019 came from Bitcoin services, and that's huge. In Q4 2019, Square did nearly $180 million in revenue related to Bitcoin on Cash App, and they finished the year with over $500 million in total revenue from Bitcoin for the year. This just further shows the momentum Bitcoin has, even in times where prices are dipping or volatile or going crazy. To put it into perspective, the revenue for Bitcoin on Cash App for 2018 during the same time period was around 1/3 of 2019's at around 48 million. You can see the growth represented in these numbers on paper. In my mind, that is a positive sign, despite the fact that the prices aren't looking so hot right now. Even furthermore, Square is pushing its own implementation of its own Bitcoin-focused payment products with Lightning that should further catapult Bitcoin into more hands globally. And this year, Cash App is already poised to process nearly 750 million in Bitcoin transactions just in Q1 2020. So that being said, I'm quite optimistic in this regard. Now, as always, folks, I will link up some other awesome content here for you to check out if you have a moment. And of course, thank you so much for watching. And until next week, cheers.